Hello and welcome. Today, we are going to analyze the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympics from a sociological perspective. First, I will start with a little background on the gender inequalities in the Olympics. Now, the Olympics are historically based on sexism. The founder of the modern games, Pierre de Coubertin, shown here on the right, is known to have said, "Women have but one task, that of the role of crowning the winner with garlands. In public competitions, women's participation must be absolutely prohibited. It is indecent that spectators should be exposed to the risk of seeing the body of a woman being smashed before their eyes." Now, this year, 2018, 43% of 2,920 athletes in Pyeongchang were women. So sure, we've come a long way since the first Winter Olympics in 1924, when only 11 out of 258 athletes were women, and all of which were figure skaters. But throughout the Winter Olympics schedule, however, there were many reminders that in the eyes of the International Olympic Committee, women are still less than men. Now, to start, women have 6 fewer medal events than men. Next, in ski jumping, women only compete on the shorter of the 2 hills. Now, not only do male ski jumpers have 3 events compared to 1 for women, but they also have Nordic combined, which is a sport that involves both cross-country skiing and ski jumping, in which women have 0 events. Additionally, women race shorter distances in long track, speed skating, the biathlon, and cross-country skiing. And lastly, men's hockey tournament has 12 teams compared to only 8 for women. Before we try to understand why these gender inequalities occur, we must first define the orthodox gender ideology as the two-sex gender classification that assumes that females are physically weaker and less capable than males. This ideology restricts men and women to perform how society expects them to perform, rather than how they want to act. This ideology also discourages discussions about how and when sex segregation should be eliminated in sports. On the right is Sarah Hendrickson, a 23-year-old American ski jumper who won the first ever Women's World Cup season in 2012. Now, just after the Olympics, she retweeted a hateful message reading, "What's up, Sarah? Your season so far sucks. Can't be much fun. Better next season?" This tweet is an example of orthodox gender ideology because his basis for criticism lies in the fact that she is a woman and supports the opinions of Coubertin. Additionally, before the Olympics, she tweeted, "How nice would it be to have more than one event at the Olympics? Equality dreams." In this tweet, Hendrickson is outlining the effects that this orthodox gender ideology has had on her life. Since she has been viewed as inferior to male athletes by society, it feels like she can only dream of having more than one event at the Olympics. Next, we will further discuss the orthodox gender ideology in relation to women's ski jumping in the Olympics. The 2009 World Championships was the first to welcome women competitors in ski jumping. Prior to 2009, several men in the industry stated that ski jumping seemed to be inappropriate for women from a medical point of view due to the risk of possibly harming our reproductive organs. As recently as 2014, a Russian ski jumping coach, Alexander Arefyev, said, "I'm not a fan of women's ski jumping. If a man gets a serious injury, it's not fatal. But for women, it could end much more seriously." He added that ski jumping wasn't appropriate for women because women have another purpose, to have children, to do housework, to create hearth and home. Now, this statement strongly reflects the orthodox gender ideologies by inhibiting the opportunities of women solely due to their gender. Despite the fact that these female ski jumpers are passionate about what they do and extremely talented, their athleticism is frowned upon due to their stereotypical homemaker duties as women. Here I show Lindsey Vann. Lindsey Vann is a 33-year-old American ski jumper and the first ever female ski jumping world champion in 2009. Vann has played a very significant role in changing the norm and allowing women to compete as ski jumpers. In response to the commentary about ski jumping affecting women's reproductive organs, Vann states, "Ours are on the inside and they're very well protected, and theirs is literally hanging outside their body. You tell me which is safer. So when they're like, yeah, your uteruses will fall out, I'm like, well, you better check their boots for their balls. People like Van are needed in this industry to stand up against the orthodox gender ideology and make a change. In her statement, she has applied the same logic to men's reproductive organs that they have applied to her uterus. But due to the way that men and women are looked at differently in sport, relating back to the orthodox gender ideology and the apparent double standards here, it is out of the norm to refer to men's reproductive organs in the same manner. Before transitioning from the orthodox gender ideology to the cultural theory, I have one question to leave you with. Now, in your opinion, on what basis do people believe that women's ski jumping will affect their reproductive organs?
According to Jay Coakley in his book Sports and Society, cultural theory means the process through which people create, maintain, and change values, norms, ideas, and beliefs. In the Olympics, there are many instances and examples of cultural theory. During the 2018 Winter Olympics, the British news source BBC has come under fire for referring to female athletes as girls, while referring to male athletes as men. This is an example of cultural theory because it is maintaining beliefs that men are superior to women by calling women girls. Calling these women girls implies that they are young, inexperienced, and incapable. Calling these hardworking, athletic female girls is demeaning. These females deserve equality and should be called women like the women that they are.
The fact that gold medalist Chloe Kim had to defend her tears of joy after winning first place goes to show just how ingrained gender stereotypes are in our culture. Female athletes have to be especially careful of coming off too feminine, or they risk losing their male counterparts, as well as critics and fans' respect altogether. This is a great example of cultural theory because, as outlined in Chapter 2 of Coakley's book, it directly demonstrates a way in which people maintain their values as they play sports. The biggest value that female athletes seem to maintain is to try and act as tough and masculine as possible while still being seen as attractive and feminine. Here, Kim uses a narrative, which is described by Coakley as an explanation that people use to explain and make sense of their choices and actions. Her tweet serves as an explanation as to why she is crying and indirectly acknowledges that she may get some criticism for this action. Using narratives is a big part of understanding cultural theory because it reveals the fact that people see the need to justify an action if there is even a small part of them that thinks it may be criticized by the general public. Female athletes usually share narratives with viewers when it comes to showing too much emotion or too much masculinity, which can also be seen in the female athlete paradox, which will be discussed later. While watching the Winter Olympics myself, I noticed just how much more men's sports were on TV than women's. I felt that women were the focus of an event only if it was seen as more of a feminine sport, such as figure skating. However, even in that sport, the male competitors were still given a fair amount of coverage, even though female athletes oftentimes have to fight for any airtime whatsoever. These two tweets further exemplify society's obvious preference of men's sports over women's, and how broadcasters, reporters, and even entire countries can take this into consideration and unfairly have a bias towards male sports. This phenomenon can best be explained using cultural theory, because it is quite peculiar that men are automatically seen as being better at something simply because they tend to be physically bigger and stronger, even in events where sheer strength is not the objective. Here is another question for you to think about. Do you think it is fair that many broadcasters and fans see no problem with a sport being male-dominant, but it would be considered unusual if a sport was female-dominant? The female athlete paradox is described in Steinfeld's et al.'s article as sports women having toned bodies yet also avoiding excessive masculine perceived muscular bodies. This paradox is incredibly challenging for female athletes to try to deal with because no matter what they do, their bodies will always be more scrutinized in any sport that they actually play. Take Serena Williams, for example. She is one of the best tennis players of all time, male or female, yet her body is constantly criticized for being too muscular and not feminine enough. Even during her pregnancy, her body was still up for debate while it was in the process of doing the most womanly thing that a human body can do, prepare to give birth.
An Australian skier named Anna Vaith was criticized for a subpar performance during her race at the 2018 Winter Olympics. Of course, that is the job of news analysts. However, Bode Miller, a correspondent for NBC, blamed her struggles on the fact that Anna was recently married. This is a clear example of the female athlete paradox. Women are stereotypically the homemaker, and when a woman is stepping out of that role and pushing her boundaries, they are highly criticized. I highly doubt any male Olympic athlete would be judged on his performance based on his marital status or family. Women athletes are criticized for things a male athlete never would be.
Inhibited intentionality is the idea that women are limited in their abilities, which causes their intentions in any task to be inhibited because of their lack of confidence or feeling of belongingness in that particular role. This lack of self-efficacy stems from how society has categorized women, especially in the field of sport. Women are told to act like a woman or play like a woman when in sports. Dr. Ellen Casey in the Newsweek article tries to fight this societal norm by scientifically explaining, with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, how the uterus is not damaged by physical activity. Therefore, women are also built to play sports, not just men. Cheryl Cookie in the Huffington Post depicted this societal view of women in sports perfectly when she illustrated how female athletes are women to be lusted after first and athletes second, almost as an afterthought. They are only thought of in their heterosexual normative roles such as mother, girlfriend, or wife. Now we'll move on to a photographic depiction of inhibited intentionality in the women in the Winter Olympics. You can clearly see in the picture on the top left of the woman how sexualized these Winter Olympic athletes are. She is scantily dressed as if she was on the beach when she's actually in the snow, so this attire would make no sense in the snow. It is to just sexualize her as an object and to get more clicks. On the right-hand photo, obviously the depiction of this Winter Olympic athlete is a little better than the one on the left. However, it is still not much better because they depict her in a cute fashion, smiling and holding her snowboard with no snow in sight. Whereas the bottom picture on the left of Shaun White shows him actually on the snow and holding an American flag, a much more acceptable and appropriate picture of what the Winter Olympics has on show, rather than how they portray the women in a more sexualized fashion. Moving on to our third and final question. How do you think we can change the societal way of thinking to make people think of female athletes as athletes first, rather than firstly thinking of them as women to be desired and lusted after?